So I'm just making my way up to Hawick and stumbled across this place, the Whitrope Heritage Centre, and I think it's built on what was the old Waverley route. Now it's currently closed, opens at the Easter weekend and then in May, but it's got relics of the old border railway. So they've got a little army shunter here and a class 26 locomotive. Seen better days, but looks like they're working on it. So there are some people working here today, and they did confirm that this is indeed the old Waverley line, which used to link Edinburgh to Carlisle through the borders. There is a campaign to try and get this line reinstated, and in fact they have reinstated a section of the Waverley route south of Edinburgh. I was asking if it goes to Hawick, which is where I'm heading to, but they said not yet. So maybe one day trains will be running past here once again on the old Waverley route. So there are two class 142s, old pacer units here. In fact, one of them's got its engine running, and I just noticed it says its destination is Carlisle. So this is the interesting thing when you go for a day out. You don't always know what you're going to stumble across, and I certainly wasn't expecting to stumble across this. So I've now arrived in Hawick, Scottish border town. Not been here before, so I thought I'd just come and have a little look around. It looks like an attractive little town. So yeah, just see what Hawick's got to offer. So we've got an interesting gravestone here which says, "Here lies an honest man, John Denis, and apparently he was killed protecting his neighbour's stock in 1546. And that gravestone's been moved to this location. So an interesting sculpture here, a monument. It says, "King Robert the Bruce went hunting in the great wood of Culloden near Stirling and narrowly escaped with his own life when one of the great white bulls rushed fiercely at him. Then a man of great spirit leapt before the king and, grappling with the bull, cast it to the earth with great force and held it there, while the remaining hunters slew it with their weapons. Thereafter William Rule, the borders man who rescued the king, was called Turnbull." So this is the main high street of Hawick. It's an attractive town, but unfortunately, like so many towns in the UK, town centres, there's lots of empty shop units. So it's clearly seen better days. So I've driven a few miles out of Hawick and I've just stopped at this place called Stobs Camp. Now, it may not look much, but there was a very important military training base here at Stobs Camp, and a lot of the camp was actually on the other side of the hill over there. It was used as a place to train officers, people for the army, but it was also used as an internment camp during the First World War, and also as a very important prisoner of war camp as well. So just going to have a little wander, see what we can see. So you can just make out the remains of where buildings used to be situated. I'm assuming this might have something to do with the old military camp here for water. Apparently the camp was used all the way up to 1955. That's when the last recorded information about military activity here ends, 1955, and then it officially closed in 1957. I'm just trying to read some information online, and it says that Stobs Camp was used during the Second World War to train soldiers for the D-Day landings, but apparently there isn't a huge amount of information about Stobs Camp during the Second World War, so not really very much to see, but the foundations of the old barrack buildings, nothing here to tell you what they were used for, whether it was accommodation or stores. Can you imagine what it must have been like to be a prisoner of war here, far from your home, particularly in the winter? Very bleak location, really. So I wonder what's happened to this car. Has it been involved in an accident? Has it been gutted for its parts? Or has it been stolen and dumped here? So here we have a view looking down onto the main camp. You might just be able to make out where buildings used to stand. There is a barrack building down there, but if I come over here, you can get an idea of what it once looked like. So it says here, Stobs Camp began as a military training camp in 1903. Volunteer regiments came here for weeks at a time, living in bell tents and undertaking manoeuvres on the surrounding hills. There were post office, drying huts, YMC huts and recreation grounds for sport and exercise. In 1914, with the outbreak of the First World War, the first camp became an internment centre for foreign aliens. It was during this time that wooden barrack huts were constructed to accommodate them. By 1915, it was also a military prisoner of war camp and housed over 4,500 soldiers and sailors, mostly German, but with some other nationalities. On the hillside below you were 80 huts in 4 camps with cookhouses, laundries and shower blocks. To the left stood the camp hospital with wards, an operating theatre and a mortuary. In 1916, the civilians were moved to a camp on the Isle of Man, and Stobs remained a POW camp until 1919, when the last of the prisoners were repatriated. Today, only one hut remains in situ, with a handful of drying huts and water treatment works at the top of the hill. Behind you were the facilities for the camp guard, and a few of these buildings still remain. You can see that this hut has chains to anchor it to the ground. They've obviously done their job, as this building has been here clearly for quite a considerable length of time. It's fascinating to try and imagine what life must have been like for the people who used to be based here, for those that were sent here for training, and particularly for those that were sent here as interns or as prisoners of war. Can you imagine being brought here to the borders of Scotland, far from your home? I wonder what life was like for them and what the conditions were like for them here. Anyway, I'm off now to find the cemetery because some of those prisoners died here and they are buried here. So let's go and see if we can find the cemetery. Now, I have to confess, I wasn't sure what to expect, but I was expecting to see proper graves, but there aren't any. But you can see that there used to be graves here on this picture, and 34 soldiers, 5 sailors and 6 civilians were interred here between 1915 and 1919, succumbing from illness or injuries that they received as a result of war. And after the Second World War, the bodies of those that were buried here were moved to the Cannock Chase Cemetery. So that's why there are no gravestones here. But they have restored the monument. So this was the cemetery grounds. And as you can see, they're still remembered. So I didn't know anything about this place. It wasn't my intention to come here today, but happened to see it on the map. Thought I'd come and have a look, and yeah, very interesting. It's fascinating what you can discover and the history that's all around us. So I've come down to the main site of Stobs Camp. Very little of it left today, but it's interesting to think about what it must have been like when 4,500 people were being kept here. Basically a small town, and now nothing left. And like any small town, admittedly a military camp or detention centre for POWs, it would have still had a lot of those facilities that a small town needs. A chapel, places to eat, places for recreation and so forth. And presumably there may still be 1 or 2 people still around, still alive, who remember this camp in the 1950s. Admittedly, they'll be very elderly now, but there may still be some who remember it when it was a working military base. So here we have the last remaining hut here in Stobs Camp. I don't know when this was constructed, but very basic, simple construction. I don't know if this was used as a barracks or office space or maybe various different uses over the years. As you can see, it's in a fairly poor state of repair. So a bit of history which is slowly falling into rack and ruin. So I'm now slowly making my way home, I just stopped at this very impressive viaduct on the old Waverley route, Shankend Viaduct. Look, he's come to say hello. Hello. So here we have Shankend Station. I was hoping to try and get onto the viaduct, but it looks like this might be someone's garden. So here we are at the top of the viaduct. Trying to imagine what it must have been like to see steam engines thundering over this viaduct. Maybe one day trains will come back here and link Edinburgh to Carlisle via the Waverley route. So it's been a really interesting day today. I had plans to do a bit of a walk, but it's changed today, and that I've been discovering a lot of the history of this part of southern Scotland, the borders, and it's been really interesting. And I've come up here to an ancient settlement on the hill just above the viaduct, and it's a reminder that people have been living in this landscape for many centuries, and makes you sort of wonder what our legacy might be. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please do like and subscribe, and until next time, take care and God bless.